Thanks, Chewie. And as a third of the room just discovered, it was 81 wing, not 82 wing. Sirs, ladies and gentlemen, it is the second last chat over what I believe has been a very successful 2 days. What do I do as the Deputy Chief of Air Force in following the professional presenters that have gone before me? Well, I speak with hubris, no. I speak as a Deputy Chief talking to you about where we're going with Air Force. And I'll speak a little bit more about some reflections on the speakers as I get toward the end of my particular part of this. So we framed this conference as each third conference we do, it becomes a higher level activity, and we like to speak at the strategic level. And I think we have achieved that this time with a cogent flow of speakers through the themes that we wanted to explore. And that being the exploration of disruptors that will affect our national security, our military, and our air power policy and practice into the future. I think we've done it usefully, and I think we've done it practically, raising the level of knowledge across the strategic space in the room and about the disruptors that we may face. And I'm primarily directing those comments to everyone who is sitting in the back 2/3 of the room. Disruptors, like most things, are a double-edged sword. They reflect opportunity for the wise and clever. Just checking that my slides are following me, excuse me. And there are risks for those who are not wise and clever. Due diligence in choice and implementation is needed to effect a right balance and to rebalance over time, particularly for those systems and technologies which can turn on their creators if not properly controlled. For a smaller air force like ours, we have to appreciate what current and future disruptors means to us as a large measure of our effectiveness as the central combat provider of air power is gained through efficiency. Our population size and geography limit our ability to generate air power through mass, thus making efficiency an essential element of our force design. That's not necessarily as important for larger forces where mass can remediate inefficiency. For us, needing to be efficient drives innovation that is the hallmark of our Air Force transformation to Air Force Next. Our tyranny of distance, our geostrategy, dictates that we will transit and fight at distance. Australian regional operations will be maritime focused, and we are archipelagically based. This is both a blessing and a challenge, and is why we place importance on effective reach, global manoeuvre, and maintaining a balance between partnering and independent action in our force design. This approach is unusual in smaller air forces and equally true for our naval and land forces. We don't pretend to have all the answers. Many challenges have been posed over the last 2 days, some international, some domestic, and not just military. But we do need to be able to provide advice to government on the national effect on security posed by some disruptors so that leading policy can be formed. It's fair to say we do have a plan which will provide the government with choices about the options needed to address the central challenges the Royal Australian Air Force and its partners may face into the future. As MINDEF noted yesterday, science fiction can become fact very quickly. Our plan is to transform into a fifth generation Air Force that is fully networked, integrated into joint operations, and agile in thought and operational implementation. We will develop a force by design that will provide the effects necessary to prevail against the increasingly complex and lethal threats present in the information and warfare age. We will maximise the potential of our current capabilities and those yet to enter service to generate a new mindset built around networks that harness both the individual and collective potential of the systems. The Air Force strategy, as discussed by the Chief of Air Force at the start of the conference, deliberately sets the goal of Australia becoming one of the world's fifth generation air forces as our aim point. It's a pathway where we have decided to invest for our future and not just talk about it. To realise this transformation requires a significant reformation within Air Force. This is the reformation that will represent a step change in our approach to the delivery of air power, both technical and intellectual, and a step change in the way that we develop and interact with our workforce and our partners in security and military operations. We are not undertaking this reformation because we needed a challenge. We are reforming in response to the rapid change in the strategic circumstances in our region, many of which we've heard about over the last 2 days. The conference highlighted many of the strategic disruptors that shape our future world. I'm not going to repeat these, but I will reflect on them toward the end of my speech this afternoon. I will say rock on pensioners, and I'll say that again later on. Rather, I'm going to talk about our plan to shape our Air Force so that it'll be ready for whatever the world presents. So we began this journey back in 2000. We planned and designed and acquired a networked Air Force to conduct operations which we described back then as beyond joint. Today we call those operations integrated, and since then we have moved on. We've invested in the machines to realise our intent, to enable us to exploit network systems early and well and connect to our partners in innovative yet disciplined ways. In 2014 we publicly launched Jericho, and we have used it as our catalyst to explore and induct solutions to high value and complex problems and opportunities that are either preventing the transition to an integrated 5th generation Air Force or pushing it. And our Jericho team are hiding in here today taking copious notes, which they have now copious tasks to come. Our next evolution, Plan Jericho 2 or 2.0, however you would like to say it, will seek to accelerate the transition by identifying and exploiting disruptive innovations to deliver capability advantages and develop generational change in organisations and our workforce. Can I have a next slide, please, up in the box? Thank you. To develop and exploit a sophisticated understanding of what it means to be that future Air Force and to provide signposts for our pathway, we have chosen to view the Air Force next through 5 attributes: agile, integrated, resilient, collaborative, and informed. Next slide, please. Thank you. So what is agile to us? We know that to transition our Air Force, we must be able to quickly adjust and adapt to exploit emerging technologies. If we are to maintain a warfighting advantage in dynamic and uncertain environments, the warfighting advantage I refer to is not that of past generations. The pace of potential adversary capability evolution and its underpinning technologies can rapidly erode any advantage we may have. We need an Air Force that can rapidly identify, adapt to, and plug emerging gaps, as well as simultaneously seize opportunity. This type of agility is an attitude as much as an attribute. If we are to deliver air power that is effective in future environments, we must think differently about how we apply that air power. We must fight the adversary's capabilities and supporting systems, kinetic and non-kinetic, not just their platforms. We must consider non-traditional and asymmetric applications of air power as the new normal, while still delivering on enduring convention. As part of agility and at the heart of the reformation of our air power capabilities will be our people, not an unusual theme. They are the ultimate disruptors on one hand and the antidote to disruption on the other. Our people are the ones that turn complex, connected machines into instruments of national power. And when I refer to people who deliver air power, I'm not referring just to our aircrew. Our people are the communications operators who secure and maintain our EW and cyber networks that are so critical to our way of life but so easy to disrupt if we are not careful. They are our medical staff, technicians, engineers, logistics teams and operations officers, and these are just some of the wide variety of personnel that we train and employ. They will be people trained and educated to work together as a team. People who are practiced in the operational art needed to prevail in a complex digital age. the people who are also resilient enough to cope with and adapt to reversal. This workforce is being recruited today. The rate of social and technical advance has produced a generation of school leavers with a greater propensity to embrace change than those in the past. As we heard just with the last speaker, they are highly adaptable. We must ensure we can recruit in this generation those who have potential to excel in both our traditional air power roles as well as new age capabilities. They will be both innovative and disciplined in their approach. Now, this may sound simple, but the marketplace for this group is becoming increasingly competitive. One of the benefits of a modern, exciting Air Force with new platforms is that we are attractive, and we need to leverage off this attractiveness for the current generation. But attracting the right people is only the first part of the challenge. We need systems that reflect the new generation. And the submarine example was a good one. Thus, we are developing a total workforce framework that will bring the required skills, accelerate our requirements definition, and create a more appropriate remuneration packaging system, flexible employment, adaptive training, and all other aspects necessary to develop our future personnel needs. We are already seeing requirements for an agile framework in areas such as cyber, intelligence, and our incoming high-end capability workforces. This trend will grow, and our personnel systems must evolve to keep pace. The shift in our workforce framework and the professional culture that we aspire to in the Air Force will be a journey of many years. It's one we are already on. And an agile workforce is central to realising the potential of our new generation of networked air power capabilities. For years, our Air Force has developed in stovepipes we call force element groups, or FEGs, where we manage like capabilities. We tried once in the past to break free and failed. Through the FEGs, we are really good at individual tactical air power capabilities. They have served us well, but perhaps we need to think harder about the enterprise structure we need to generate and sustain an integrated force. Perhaps we won't fail the next time. We've been talking about network-centric warfare and the importance of integrated operations since 2000, but we have struggled to generate the cultural mindset or technical ability to realise either. We lack the tools, mindset and focus to make the transformation. We needed a catalyst to create and sustain a transformational imperative. The F-35A is that catalyst. It began as the only advanced platform on our horizon, but now is one of the many tools driving cultural and intellectual change we need. It is our other new connected capabilities that are the technical step change we have been looking for. The F-35's capacity for networking, its ability to fuse data and present information to the pilot and others on the network changes the way we must consider the kill chain and how we design and manage operations. But as I just alluded to, the F-35 is only one element that is driving this reformation inside our Air Force. Our E-18G Growler electronic attack systems are a significant forcing function for change. In the digital age, the electronic spectrum and the information it bears will be an integral part of warfare and an essential one to master. Growler is central to Australia's force-level electronic capabilities and is both a military and national asset, useful in peace as it is in war. Again, at times, the Air Force has talked a good game on its use of the EW spectrum, but we never truly could master it as a combat effect that covered the spectrum of operations. With Growler, that is changing now. The Growler is both half-back and forward in an airborne electronic attack realm. It can carve out a single slice of the adversary's EW spectrum, or it can block large swathes. It's part of a larger system to disrupt our adversaries, and it's something that we have not had to deal with in the past, and we need to be careful that we don't shut down our own systems in the process. The Growler is a complementary capability with all our other network systems, but in particular the F-35, the P-8 and the E-7A. It may be surprising to some in the room to realise that our E-7 is over 15 years old. In its own way, it was a catalyst for change. It provided commanders with an agile air battle management system, and integrated across the joint force. It has provided our Air Force with tangible experience of how technology could support and speed up all-force decision-making in a highly complex and dynamic environment. We took a risk on it, and before it was fully operational, we deployed it to the Middle East, and it has proven its worth. We've now commenced the next phase of the Wedgetail development through a project that will improve its utility for ISR and command and control missions. It's an exciting space to be in. The P-8 Poseidon maritime patrol and surveillance response aircraft, like the P-3, before it is acknowledged that we are a maritime nation, we must be vigilant in our maritime environment. The P-8 provides Australia with greater reach and enhanced capability to respond to challenges in national waters and global maritime commons. To some, it may simply look like a P-3 replacement, but that would be wrong. The P-8 has already taken our maritime surveillance capability into the networked age and has already surpassed what the P-3 can do, and it's at the beginning of its development cycle. Like the P-3, the P-8 will have surface and subsurface sensors, as well as a modern weapon suite. But it is what it does with the sensor data that makes it different. Through an onboard system to come in the future called Minotaur, we will witness a revolution in data and track fusion for that platform. Onboard sensor data will be fused with networked data that may come from other air, maritime, land, and potentially space-based systems to feed its own weapons or the network-capable weapons in the battle space. If you look at our force mix, we are a hybrid, primarily US Navy generated platforms. It makes us an interesting customer for both the USAF and the US Navy. Now, if that wasn't enough, the P-8 is also air-to-air refuelable. It increases its persistence in the battle space, enabling it to reach out to locations previously not accessible, generating mission lengths that will be limited by human endurance and not the endurance of the platform. Network surveillance and control agility through these new capabilities will ensure we can fight, shape, and respond over water and land, from search and rescue through to high-end combat operations. In network combat operations, command and control's focus should be on the effect needed at the target, physical or virtual, and not so much on who or how. Mastering who and how is necessary but not sufficient if we are to prevail in the contemporary and future conflict space. Mastering the orchestration and delivery of networked effect will require our C2 to be fully cross-domain. We must be able to link, sync and integrate capability for effect across the joint and combined space. Further, we, the Australians, wish to be part of the design of the next generation of coalition C2 systems. We seek them to be scalable to a large and small force, scalable for military and security operations, scalable for security access, scalable to national or international leadership, effective in networked and rapidly evolving operations, and not people-heavy. We don't want much. Should be easy, right? Our investment in the next generation of C2, currently in analysis with the Jericho team, through our collaboration with MITRE, will look to realise real-time operational decision superiority. And for the Jericho boys, if you have your pens out, that includes AI. Good decisions are made by people whose skills are developed and tested through effective education, training and practice. We are beginning to implement the latest in education and learning technologies to emulate some of the characteristics of the networked cyber capabilities that Air Force will be operating into the future. Whiteboards and PowerPoint are not effective. The learning generation does it differently on their iPad and in the cloud. The evolution in gaming technologies for simulation opens an entirely new world for operational education, training, assessment and practice. Simulation is a technology that enables people to practice command for operational as well as technical mastery across the networked force at low cost, and it's a technology we are investing in. We are embracing live, virtual and constructive environments. We understand that live test and training is expensive, and standing up a whole network force is a rare occurrence. Nor can the full capability of the force be exposed. Through LVC environments, we will generate the scale, complexity and fidelity required to emulate modern networked systems and platforms. The Air Force is committed to significant enhancement to key ranges and LVC capabilities in order to establish the advanced test and training environment. This is an environment that is built predominantly around Woomera and Delamere, and further enhanced through the interconnected and integrated simulation assets which allow our high-end platforms to train together in the virtual environment. As well, we are committed to the provision of training facilities capable of replicating the advanced electronic threat scenarios. All of these systems are mobile and networked, and when coupled with a mature integrated LVC system, they will provide the ADF warfighters with a realistic scenario required to maintain the combat edge into the future. Air Force will maximise its effectiveness through the deliberate integration of capabilities across the services, regardless of their developmental generation, against an assessed priority and need. A contemporary Air Force will not survive if it communicates, senses or fights at the speed of its oldest asset. Our Air Force will only realise its potential if we integrate our older capabilities with those being introduced now. Again, a not uncommon theme throughout the last couple of days. We cannot afford to develop capabilities without understanding its place in the network. This is why our approach of a force by design is so critical to us. We understand that integration reduces ambiguity, but we have learnt the hard way that add-on integration post-acquisition is outrageously expensive and you buy a lesser product. We can and will leverage innovation so that challenges are viewed as the art of the possible, not just the art of the preferred. And opportunities will be viewed as the means to gain combat advantage, even if the advantage is transitory. We recognise that integration does not have to be perfect, but it does need to be right. It needs to be right enough to be resilient, enough to stand up to the reality of conflict, where chaos and violence remain the defining characters. Future contested environments may come in many forms, but in future conflict we should expect attacks to be simultaneous on many fronts. We must be able to recover when hit, whether that hit is kinetic or non-kinetic. Our people, processes and systems must be tried and tested to be resilient, coherent and competitive despite the shock of conflict. They must continue functioning effectively and provide options to win in complex, contested environments. They must be designed and tested to degrade gracefully and recover swiftly in the face of challenge. Adversaries are likely to apply new and unpredictable attack vectors that will test our force like never before. That is the product of a disruptive digital world. We need the ability to absorb shock, take a first blow, and if necessary, be able to punch back with sufficient weight to get the job done or to give the opponent pause in striking in the first place. We should also be seen as unpredictable to the adversary. In fact, networked warfare, properly mastered, will appear orchestrated to us, but utterly chaotic to those who are looking inside. They should feel unbalanced, and the effect because they cannot sense what is happening to them in the conflict space. From our end, is it in the cyber and electromagnetic spectrum where we are most obviously vulnerable and where an adversary may strike first. Attacks may be subtle and well in advance of any traditional conflict, or in parallel. At the high end, we almost certainly can expect disrupted national infrastructure and communications to affect national military C2 and ISR. Through good design, we will degrade gracefully and recover resiliently. It is no secret that air power is delivered through air bases, whether those are major facilities, forward staging areas, or afloat. We need to develop greater operational resilience in our bases, applying camouflage, concealment, deception, and recovery measures. We must be agile in our basing and the mobility of our supporting infrastructure. This concept is being actively explored in collaboration with the US under the Enhanced Air Cooperation Program. In fact, in November 17, some 40 RAAF and USAF personnel from our respective forces gathered at RAAF Base Sherga, right up on the northern tip of Queensland, and practiced austere operations and austere base activation. And these bases form the legacy of some hard lessons that Australia learned in World War II about keeping all their assets in one place. We have participated in the US Pacific Air Force's Agile Combat Employment exercises. These have informed both capability development proposals as well as operating concept designs for Air Force expeditionary airfield operations. We are designing in the flexibility to permit manoeuvre in our basing options to suit the threat. We recognise that Air Force does not have the monopoly on good ideas, and building an integrated force is a shared effort. We acknowledge and welcome that fact. We are an Air Force of partners, and therefore an Air Force of seams to be managed. Proper management realises synergies. Poor management opens those gaps further. Good adversaries probe for gaps, and we are planning to close them by design. National security challenges are becoming increasingly complex, demanding cross-functional teams to resolve. To meet that end, our people will have to develop strong personal networks, both across Air Force and across the broader defence and whole of government space, our allies and the industrial world. Domestically, I think the most fruitful form of collaboration is between the public and private sectors, and here I mean industry. Industry owns the creation of the information and the technological edge that we seek, not Air Force. Air Force owns its realisation. Collaboration with industry is a surer way to develop and deliver that next big disruptor and counter disruptive threats. Partnering with industry has long been a core element of our defence policy through a number of iterations of the White Paper. However, we took a major step along this journey when industry was directed to be part of the force in being and was funded so with an integrated investment program. We recognise the trust it places in industry inside Air Force. We understand its role in the national security enterprise, and as an example of this trust can be viewed through the classified briefings that the Air Force Jericho team provided to industry last year on the Air Force operating concept. This is our approach to delivering air power to the joint force for the next 10 years at least. You would have noticed that the dominant thread through my presentation has been people and systems. Get some of that TASH action. Noting, of course, that our new platforms are systems in their own right because they are designed to be networked. I do not wish to understate the importance material acquisitions have in the delivery of our future air power, but it is our people, not only the machines, that will ensure we realise our goal of reforming Air Force into a networked, integrated force. An informed workforce is central to our efficiency and thereby our effectiveness. As a medium-sized Air Force, an informed workforce is one that is strategically, operationally, tactically and technically aware of the effects they are to generate and their role as part of the integrated force. We've commenced a series of high-performance programs and revised our professional military education and training, no groaning. Through coaching, mentoring and leadership, we will strengthen the resilience, mental health and well-being of our airmen and airwomen across the organisation. Now, before I conclude, I just want to reflect on some of the lessons from the last couple of days. And I was stunned, having worked on the speech that I was going to give over the last 2 weeks, that it needed very little modification. Did I change it? No. I think what we achieved in speaking strategically across the last 2 days supports the strategy that's in place for Air Force, and I feel very comfortable in that regard. A few things to be cautious of. Binary thought is a slippery slope. Hubris leads to nothing good, and complex problems require calmness. The Canberra consensus is something that is what it is and we need to be aware of it. Complacency is a serious problem for Australians because that's just who we are sometimes. And an absence of strategy is a dangerous way to run a country. I particularly liked, and the Chief remarked at the time that when Mark was speaking just recently, trust your people in the comm space, accept the occasional disruption of screw-ups because the balance of advantage is on our side. It also requires some courage and some leadership. If you apply disruptive technology to the military and you compare those disruptors with what you currently have, you are missing the point. we can hold on to tight. And finally, to good old Bernard, who always provides an amazing insight into what Australia actually looks like compared to what we think it looks like. I know that I can get a good coffee while a management consultant uses my watch to tell me the time. And we are intimately changeable. So I started by describing Air Force's strategy in vectors in which we will invest so that we can transform an Air Force into an Air Force that is networked and integrated. We'll deliver air power for the Joint Force to assure Australia's security. We are making the investments in leading-edge capabilities, partnerships, and critically in our people to take advantage of some of the disruptors highlighted over the last 2 days. We acknowledge that we don't have all the answers and that the last couple of days have provided a lot of food for thought and a lot of introspection to come over the next few weeks. And I encourage everyone in the back 2/3 of the room not to be buried back in your day job and forget what you have heard over the last couple of days. Mull on it, sip on it over a coffee, and use your own watch. Our commitment to achieving this transformation runs from the most junior recruit through to the Chief of Air Force. However, the drive for strategic change ultimately comes through commitment and practice of Air Force's leaders. The Chief and I, together with the senior leadership team, have taken ownership of our reformation, and together we will deliver what we have promised to the Australian government. Government has trusted us enough to recapitalise the Air Force for the digital age. As has been pointed out, we have a unique opportunity to become an integrated force right now. To exploit the opportunities offered and repay government's faith in us, we now commit to meet the biggest intellectual challenge in our history: reformation for effect in the digital age. We owe that future a debt, and we have already started paying it off. Thank you.